Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Claudia Monicelli with another episode of the Pleasure Seeking Podcast. And today I have such a lovely, beautiful guest with me, and she'll talk about herself. I don't want to tell you too much, but I will tell you her background. Her name is Sandy Vo. Sandy is a visionary meditation teacher and a yogi. She's the founder of globally rated Prosperous the Podcast, and her signature transformation program called Prosperous School of Self-Realization, a 90-day integrative breakthrough experience for modern day leaders. Sandy encountered, and I say this, but I know, she seems so young, and I'm thinking, when did she do all this? We'll get her in a little bit. She encountered the path of meditation after living with crippling depression and anxiety for most of her teen years. And through practicing self-transformation methods, she learned how to self-heal mental, emotional, physical trauma and break generational patterns. Today, Sandy speaks on stages. She's a host. She hosts live events, and she facilitates experiences for people to remember their true nature. She supports others in bridging the gap between the outer world of their achievements and the inner world of fulfillment. And she offers a heart-centered, holistic approach that integrates the body, the mind, spirit, and guides individuals, no matter how busy they are, to experience life's greatest opportunity, which is self-realization. And she's also the co-founder of a conscious media platform called Ladies Aligned. I love that. I love that. Come on in, Sandra, and let's give you a round of applause.
Thank you so much for having me.
Don't be shy. I can't see you. Turn on the cam.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It's a joy. So as ladies and gentlemen, please look, she's so young. She's so young and beautiful. You think, well, how did she get there? So tell us a little bit about your background, ethnic background, where you grew up, and that'll give us the in to start talking about other things. Go ahead.
Yes. And thank you so much for that introduction. Your voice was so soothing and buttery. I was like, what a great way to be introduced to the Pleasure Seeking Podcast. So my background, I am Vietnamese, Indian, and Black. So my mom is half Vietnamese and African American, and then my dad is half Vietnamese and Indian. So I'm very rooted in the Vietnamese culture. And I would say within the past 2 years, I've been diving deeper into the African American culture and the Indian culture as well. So it's been a very beautiful journey.
The life is going to be very long, so you can dive into any type,
I'll keep doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. I did say that you started, that you had this depression period during your teens. What was that all about? How did it come out? I mean, how did it present?
Yeah, it wasn't
like mind sharing that with us.
Of course. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like a one and done deal. Like it just happened overnight. I think it's a series of events that happened when I was younger, and where I can pinpoint it was when my father left when I was younger. I was very close to my father. We have the same birthdays, and, we often shared those long car rides and deeper conversations. And a lot of my core values were taught to me by my father. Being multiracial, and also, growing up with parents where they were multi-religious as well. My dad was Buddhist, and, he would take me to explore temples, and my mom was Catholic, and she would take me to the church. I got baptized. And so, my dad taught me that no matter what religion it is, it's all trying to teach you the core messages of how to be a good human being and how to be a kind and compassionate human being. And so I think he gifted me with these lenses to view the world differently at that young age. And so I'm very grateful for that. And you can imagine the proximity and the intimacy of our relationship from that philosophical place, from that deep father-daughter bonding place, and then suddenly to have all of that ripped away
Sure.
from me
Yeah.
when things didn't work out for him and my mom. And so I resented the both of them for that.
I
I
can
was
imagine.
angry.
Sure.
Yeah. I was angry at my mom that, she was just so focused on gambling. That was a really big thing for my mom. I was angry at my dad for just leaving and giving up.
Yeah, I think that that's sort of a common place for people at that age. I could remember myself, you see parents as they have their own agendas. Why aren't they? Here I am. What are they doing? They're supposed to be here and not there, and I'm sure your children will the same thing be thinking, no matter where you're going to be. Obviously, you have so many things on your plate there that you will be going places. And so don't be surprised if your children one day would start thinking, oh, where's mom?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I understand it so much more now in hindsight, but
Yeah,
at that time,
of course.
there was so much, resentment that was buried there that I didn't actually know that was there. I couldn't even admit that I was
Right.
angry.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so for me, it stemmed at that young age. And that was the beginning of depression that I didn't know that I had.
Mm-hmm.
And,
what's interesting for me, because I too, at the teenage years, I had a couple of bouts with that. And I'm interested in knowing how it played out for you, because for me, I could remember specifically, I didn't know I had a depression. And I remember looking in the mirror and I couldn't see myself. I was 13, I couldn't touch, and I saw my outline was a little hazy, but the sense of self just went out the window. What was it like for you?
Yeah, I think for me, it was, I noticed it more during my early college years when I started putting on a lot of weight on my body, and I would isolate myself. I was at, my name's Sandy Bow. So I walk in the room and you would hear people go, oh, it's the Bow show, like life of the party, super vibrant, but over time, people thought that I transferred schools because I was just not around. I just isolated myself. I remember just having blackout periods where
Yes,
I can't recall certain moments of my life because I was that depressed, right? And so when I racked on all that weight, that's when I knew that what is going on here? I feel so far removed from myself. I don't know who I am anymore. I've invested so much of myself into these relationships. My dad, my cousin passed away as well, who I was very close to. And this was all around the same time. I felt like I gave all of me and now I have nothing left of me for me.
How did you come out of it then? Do you remember how it was for you to, was it a sudden wake up, or was it something that helped you get out of it, or was it a very slow process to come out of that depressive state?
Yeah, I talk a lot about the luxury of pain. The luxury of pain was how I came out of it. I got to this place in my life where I knew that I needed help. I knew that I couldn't continue living the way that I was living. I did all kinds of things just to try to survive. I was like, okay, if I'm eating unhealthy and it's causing me all this pain, let me start taking better care of my body. Let me go to the gym. So I competed for bodybuilding so that I could have a set date, right? So I could have a set date so that I could make it on stage and I can at least like have a goal to hold on to. So I found a new extreme and a new way of exerting that energy. I also tried to keep myself busy and do a lot of things. And so I did all these things, but what it ended up doing was causing more pain because I realized that the nice body isn't going to make me happy.
Right.
Achieving high goals in college and hitting like the dean's list is not going to make me happy. It didn't bring me what I was looking for. So it got to this place where I felt completely burnt out. I didn't have any energy left because I put so much in physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I had nothing left in me. I had disconnected my relationship with God. I remember looking up at the sky and saying, why me? And just blaming it all on God, just disconnecting that relationship.
Oh, we all have those moments.
Yeah.
Raise your hand who's never done that.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And so that summer, I just completely lost all of me. I remember going for about 4 or 5 days, 4 days, probably without any sleep. And somehow I drove myself to my best friend's mom's house, where somewhere in my unconscious mind, I knew that she had a degree in psychology and that maybe she'll be able to guide me somewhere. And she told me that she told me that when I got there, I asked her, "Where am I?" And I had no idea how I actually got there.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was my, my breaking through moment, and that it wasn't over there. I thought that I'm just like, I feel so mentally sick. Yeah. I feel so disconnected from everything in this world. I feel like I'm leaving empty footprints on the earth. Maybe the answer is to leave, to actually, leave this world, take my own life. And that was the driving point.
I know, where you are now because you're with me. So now, since you are with me, I'm going to take you and bring you on another little path in your discussion. So we now know where Sandy Vo came from. Now, there are a couple of topics that I'd like to touch on, and we've spoken about them before. And one of them is precisely meditation. And I'm wondering if the meditative practice, together with elements of breathing, types of breathing practice, if that was instrumental in helping you, or did your meditative practice come much, much later? How did that start? And tell us what kind of meditative practice, what is it for you? Since meditation is quite personal, it's different for everyone, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. So that same summer, when I had my burnout, that's when I was guided to my meditation teacher. And I saw a few different physicians and therapists within that one summer. None of them resonated with me. It was almost like I had this internal meter that just knew what I was looking for, even though I didn't intellectually know. So when I was guided to the meditation teacher and I had my very first meditation session, it was like this wave of peace and calm and sacred, wholesome, nurturing energy that just overtook my entire body.
That's how it is. Yep.
Yeah. And what's fascinating is it didn't come from my mom. It didn't come from my dad. It didn't come from anything that was outside of me. It didn't come from a boyfriend or a friend or validation. It came from within me. And I'm like,
amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is amazing. Right? And what's so interesting about that is that it's such a personal experience that it's very difficult to even communicate that to someone else. And that's why I said, how was it, I asked you why or how was it for you? And you mentioned that the breathing, 5-element breathing practice, you're a yogi. Now, I know that the breathing, please forgive me if I say that for me, yoga is a 4-letter word. I say, because I'm a runner, I'm a swimmer, if I have to do yoga, it's punishment for me.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the breathing practice, and what are the 5 elements, 5-element breathing practice? What is it?
Yeah. So going back to how I got into meditation, after I learned meditation from my teacher, and I learned a body of knowledge that came from thousands and thousands of years ago, I started to experiment it with myself. And I started to find ways to make it work in this modern world, because there were some things that it felt like it was for ancient times, but we're living in a world now where things are so busy. And I knew that if I wanted to continue to create success within this world, I also needed to understand how to make these practices work in a way where I can succeed and it can support me no matter where I'm at or what I'm doing. And so I started my own online practice. I knew that it was my calling to become a meditation teacher. And within the time span of these 8 years, I formed what I call a body of wisdom called Shanta Royale Meditation. And it stands for the royal path of peace. And so just to go back to what you were saying about yoga, we have this concept in our society that yoga stands for those pretzel positions, right? That you're like, you got to slow down. You got to like stretch your body out and do all types of positions. So yoga, in the most ancient sense and in the most literal sense, is a Sanskrit word that stands for union. So it's not so much about the physical postures. It's about living in union with your highest self, or with the divine, or with the universe. So for you, when you are running, when you are swimming, when you are moving in a way where you're so in tune with your own
Yes.
body,
Yes.
that is your form of practicing yoga, right?
Yes.
You reach
Yes.
the ascended,
Exactly.
super conscious states within your mind, and you literally feel relieved, and you feel the joy and the love that comes from that, right? And so
Right.
the way that I teach Shanto Rael meditation is in a way that harmonizes the present modern person back to their own true nature by incorporating the 5 elements. So the 5 elements is earth, water, fire, air, and space. So along with that, I created the 5 element meditation and the 5 element breathing practice. So there's different types of breathing that you can do that guides the mind, the body, and the spirit, so they become connected, so that you can become more present. You can actually experience that sense of joy and peace within yourself while doing all the things that you want to do in the
Now,
world.
I'm going to make you talk a little bit more specific about, you talk about a practice, and you talk about the work that you do with others, right? Give us an example of a case, and there must be one, where a person comes and they're agitated, anxiety ridden, they're a mess, a hot mess, as they say. Does it ever occur to you that a person just doesn't get better? It just doesn't help them in any way. Has it ever happened to you? Have you ever had a case? I'm talking about a case study, say Miss XYZ came in and then she left because, and it wasn't ready. She wasn't ready for it, or something like that. Has it ever happened to you that someone had all the good intentions but then came away thinking, no, this is not for me? Just like you went to this different psychologists and, they didn't resonate with you.
I've never been asked that question. And so it's fun for me to actually sit and reflect right now. And as I'm reflecting, there has never been one person that has gone through the meditations or anything that I taught and say that it's not for me. And I'm realizing that the reason why is because it meets people at the level of consciousness that they are at. It meets them at where it's not in a way that feels polarizing, where it's like, you must do this, or if you don't do this, then you're not going to achieve those results. And so, I've had incredible transformation stories because of that.
There's another question too, that's in part linked to that. When we're in a position of facilitating or guiding or teaching, one of the big perks for the person doing that is that we learn so much. Now, I'm going to ask, of course, what is the most interesting thing you've learned from your interaction with some people while you're working with them?
I feel like as people, especially if you're in the field of being a healer, a therapist, a doctor, you're on the side of being a caretaker or a healthcare provider, you always feel like you have to exert so much of your own energy in order for those people to get phenomenal results. And what I found through my 8 years of doing this now is that you don't need to exert a lot of your energy at all. It's really just about giving your full presence there, because the most that people need is your presence and also your attention. And so once you have your presence and your attention there, they actually feel like someone is listening to them. And a lot of people feel like that's not what they have. And so it gets to be really, really simple. And so I walk away from every session that I have with my students or my clients, and I feel energized. I don't feel drained from the things that they tell me. Some things are hard. I mean, people have gone through years of trauma and generational bondages that they've been clinging onto that really affects them.
Wait. I'm going to stop you there just a minute. Forgive me, Sandra. When you talk about generational bondage, what do you mean exactly by that?
What I mean is that sometimes we think that we are living the life and the reality that we want, but what we don't realize is we are living the life and the reality that our parents want for us, or that our parents wanted for themselves, but they never had. And that came from their parents and their parents. And so some of our habit patterns and behaviors are part of an old programming that come from our lineage of generations before us. And this shows up in, racism and some of the common societal things that we see within our culture. And it shows up in the way that we interact, the way that we behave. We all have that type of generational bondage. And so when you do more of the meditative work, you're able to uncover that and you're able to get back to the root of who you are, instead of working against it.
Of course, of course. There were a couple of other things that I'd like you to touch on, if you don't mind, because you mentioned to me the notion of unlocking the superconscious mind and linking it to self-care. Now, when I think of the superconscious mind, first of all, I mean, I would know, but probably a lot of people do not know what that is. So maybe you can touch on that and sort of give us an idea. First of all, where is this superconscious mind? What is it?
Yeah. And I love your motion right there. Where is the superconscious mind?
Yeah.
So in Shanta Royale meditation, and also in the lineage that I've also learned this from too, we have 3 states of mind. We have the unconscious mind, the conscious mind, and the superconscious mind. So the unconscious mind is a part of us that is our old programming, habit patterns, behaviors that stem from when we were born or even before we were born until now. And this unconscious mind drives about 98% of our thoughts and our behaviors. So we have a lot of work to do in terms of unpacking that daily. So that's the unconscious mind. And that's what meditation helps you to do, is to unpack it. Then we have the conscious mind. So the conscious mind is what I'm using right now and you're using for us to communicate together, because we're giving each other one-pointed attention and we are being present with each other. And it is our present awareness. That is the conscious mind. It's what you're being conscious about in this moment. And it's the 2%, 1% of the mind. And then we have the superconscious mind. So the superconscious mind is above the unconscious and the conscious mind. The superconscious mind is within the mind and above the mind. It's a part of us that is connected to the universe. It's connected to this infinite intelligence, the divine. It's a part of us that we access when we are running, when we are painting, when we get lost in time, when we're making love with someone that we love. We ascend ourselves to the superconscious state where we are no longer thinking about the past or the future, but we're so deeply present with ourselves that we're in that more of a flow state. And I call it the royal state.
I'm glad I asked you, because the superconscious mind in psychology is defined a bit differently. But when you mentioned when you say that the superconscious mind is above the other two, it brings me to say that it's part of our higher self, what we would call our higher self, or getting in touch with our higher self. And in many people, that is almost impossible to do. First of all, to conceive, and then to actually contact that higher self. And in my take is that you don't have to be a psychic to do that. You don't have to be a yogi to do that. So let's say that you're working to sensitize people, to make people aware of the different states of mind. Let's put it that way. Now, when you also mentioned this in relation to self-care, can you link that to self-care?
Yeah. So when I say self-care is being self-aware.
Oh,
so
okay. There you go. Mm-hmm.
We talked about the conscious mind being awareness, right? So what happens is when you are aware of your own desires or of what you need, because here's the thing, oftentimes we spend the majority of our time working against our own nature. So it's almost like there's a river that flows down, but we're trying to swim up the current. And because we're doing that, we're working harder and we're drowning. Yeah. Right. And so what happens is when you become aware of something, it's our responsibility to actually be able to take care of ourselves. And when we do that, that's when we reach the super conscious states within our mind. That's when we access, and that's when we communicate with our higher self. Because now we're working with our true nature. We're not working against it by continuing to resist or to give in to old habit patterns or relationships that we know that are no longer serving us.
Yeah.
So I'm actually curious, Claudia, because I know that your background is as a therapist. So I'm curious, how do you define the super conscious mind? Because I'd love to see that and how it would relate to the self-care as well.
I'm a therapist, a soul therapist. So I work in dimensions, and the higher self goes from a certain dimension upward into infinity. And that's how I define it. And psychology defines it in a different way. But there are three different, and more or less, these are words that are thrown around and people understand them sometimes, but I like to contextualize it. What I wanted to do is, I left it for last, but I know this is a really hot topic. If did I satisfy you? Did my answer satisfy you, or can I go on?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because I wanted to get to this third topic here. It's one of my favorites when we talk about relationships. For me, everything is emotional. Everything is relationships. We walk out of our house. Everything you do is in relation to others at times, and a relationship with ourselves. So it's about a relationship. And stress, you mentioned stress and relationships. I'm going to throw the ball, take the ball and run with it. And as is my habit, I'll dive into what you're saying, if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course. So everything in our life is a relationship, right? Like we think that we're having a relationship with, our partner, our mom, our dad, our sister, our siblings, friends, the media, but we're really just having a relationship with ourselves. And so we're better off in recognizing it in that way, so that we realize that everyone around us is simply a mirror to teach us something about ourselves.
Wait. Now that's a loaded statement. So let's talk about John Smith. All right. Well, let's talk about a fictional person who, use him as an example to say he has a companion called Susan, and what happens. So to make me understand, what is it that they do together that he thinks he's having a relationship with her, and what exactly is he doing with the relationship for himself? Because I think that maybe that will help us better understand.
Yeah. So let's say that, so you said John Smith and Susan, right? So let's say John Smith and Susan are a couple, right? And Susan doesn't know how to, let's say, I'm just going to use the example of fixing a tire. Susan doesn't know how to fix a tire. Susan doesn't know how to do a lot of handy things around the house. Right. And Susan is constantly relying on John to do everything around the house. Okay. So she doesn't put in that effort to learn how to do all of those things herself. And now she's really resentful. She's upset with him because he is getting resentful at her because he's giving a lot of his time and energy into helping her. And it seems like no matter how much he's helped her, she continues to just take advantage of it and doesn't learn from that lesson. So what's happening within this relationship right now is Susan sees it as, I am separate of John. So John is not helping me, continuing to understand this. And then John is thinking that he's resentful because he continues to help her, but she's not learning the lesson that's to be learned. But now if Susan were to put on the lens that John is simply a mirror and John is here to teach me something, and same with John, then what would happen is that John would recognize that he is having a relationship with himself. He is enabling her because he continues to say, yes, 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 yes. But on the inside, he's very much resenting it. So there's something within John that allows him to say yes when he really means no, and when he really wants to set those boundaries for himself. So now if John were to recognize that she is simply a mirror for him to see this within himself, then now he's going to have more boundaries. He's going to say, hey, babe, I know that you're not great with all these handy things. And every time I talk to you, I'm talking to you in a way so that you can actually learn how to do it for yourself. So next time, would you mind working on this for a little bit longer and trying your very best before you tell me, what you need? Something along those lines.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
So,
I got it perfectly. So have you ever worked with relationships yourself? Do they come to you and in some way you work with them, or are they there in, with other people working with yoga or meditation? Do you actually do couples therapy or anything like that?
I have had couples reach out to me. Yep. I've had sessions with couples, but most of the work that I do is with that one person, and you can watch it leak into the life of the other couple as well.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. And just, I'm curious, was it a man or a woman who came to you with a couple problem?
Woman.
A woman. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if most of your clientele is female or male. Do you have an idea?
Yep. They're mostly women.
Women.
Yep. But I'm I've been opening it up to more males because I have had male inquiries as well. So
yeah, mine is about 25%, 75%, 25% males. And it used to be 90-10. So slowly but surely it's opening up. Yeah. What about the stress in the relationship? What is that made out of? What causes stress? Apart from this, mirroring, they're having a relationship with themselves. What is the stress? How does it emerge in people's stories to you concerning couples?
Yeah, I view stress as consciousness that's stored in the mind or in the body. And so if we're entering into a relationship with someone, it's two different people that have two completely different upbringings, programming, belief systems, religious backgrounds, and experiences. And now you're bringing them together in the container of a relationship, and you're expecting for it just to work. And not only that, but then you start comparing on what relationships are supposed to look like in the outside world based on the movies that you've watched, things that you see on social media. And now you're adding more pressure and more stress in the relationship because you say it's supposed to look like this versus it being like this. And so I think that's a lot of where stress comes from, is number one, our upbringing and our own personal programming that we bring into the relationship. And the second thing is the comparison that happens as well.
Yeah, it goes back to the generational upbringing. Yeah. In my work, it spells out as genetic karma. Brought down at the soul level, our practices that we don't even agree with, we don't even agree with certain ideas but they have been ingrained in the genetic patterns. When it goes on beyond 3 generations, then it sticks with us and needs to really be cleared energetically. Yeah.
Absolutely.
How interesting this work is. What is the most interesting part of what do you like the most about the work that you do? Or what how can I put it? One particular service or one particular activity that you work with? What is your favorite? Do you have one?
I really enjoy the in-person experiences that I have with people, but, it's been fascinating for me. I started off doing these workshops in person, and then I brought it into the online world. And what's been fascinating is to see the transformations that happen just through a computer. I think what I value the most is in seeing people use these tools, no matter what their age groups are. I had this one woman who was in her 50s who, felt something as if it happened, something traumatic that happened to her. She felt it as if it happened just yesterday. And she was able to unlock some of that energy and that trauma within her body. And what ended up happening was, through the breathing practices, she was able to clear a cyst that showed up in her body. She went to the doctors. She went to the doctors a month after doing these breathing practices, and the doctor was not able to find the cyst anywhere in her body. And that was a really big health scare for her. Of course. And it disappeared. And her arthritis also disappeared. She was like, I am 55 and I feel like I'm 25 years old. I have no pain in my body. And I think for me, it's them, you know, I'm just giving them the tools,
Right,
but it's
right.
up to them to actually use
Yeah.
them.
Let's
So
say this out loud. People should not have pain, no matter what their age is. And I'm much older than that client. And I firmly believe this. I see it. I've been told this from everywhere. If there is pain and malformation, it comes from something that shouldn't be there. If you're not aligned, there's an energetic, emotional issue there. And so, I'm saying this because many people think, oh, well, I can't bend my finger and it has to be arthritis because who knows how old I am. It's not that at times, it's not really. And it's something that is workable through movement. And that's interesting that you said it, because when you do see it's like the stories of the Bible, and Jesus Christ would say, rise up and walk, and they would walk. And I, as a child, and hearing those stories at Catholic school, I used to say, come on. But when it happens to me with my clients, I think that was true. That's actually true. It happens. It happens. They do heal, and it's right before your eyes. It's amazing, isn't it? And it gives you such satisfaction when it happens. I'm sure it's the same for you. I would love to go on and on and on, because the type of work you do is so, because, for example, you talk about the Prosperous the Podcast. It's a podcast that you have.
Yep.
And what is it about? How did it start?
Yeah, so I've been podcasting for 3 years now, and I think we're at over 160 something episodes.
Good.
But Prosperous is something that started during the pandemic, because Prosperous is all about knowing that you don't have to be a yogi or a monk to experience a sense of inner peace. You don't need to book an Eat, Pray, Love trip to India or to Bali or Costa Rica to find it. You can find that within. You can find that while being a householder. You can find that while paying the bills. And I teach that everyone has access to prosperity, and prosperity is self-realization. It's knowing who you are at your core on all dimensions, all facets, all levels, while honoring your human experience. So Prosperous, when you tune into it, it's about 15 to 25-minute long episodes where there's just this frequency of you meeting yourself again and again and again. The topics that I talk about, the state that I'm in a very meditative state as I'm talking. There's music in the background, and it just soothes you, and it brings you back to remembering who you are.
So let's name drop a little bit. So for the audience, how can they find you? You have this podcast, and it's called Prosperous, correct? All right. Then what about your website? And I will be writing these underneath in the descriptions. You have a website that they can turn to.
Yes, it's sandyvo.com. So it's SANDY, V as in victory, O.com. Everything is on there. YouTube, the podcast, blogs, how you can join Prosperous if that's something you're interested in, upcoming events. You can find all of that on the website.
Oh, that's great. That is really fantastic, because you come away, I feel we've come away with tools and toys, and we know what to do now. Thank you so much for coming. And again, I'll say it again, such a young age. I don't want to know your age, but you exude youth, no matter what your age is. And the job that you're doing is such it's a burning flame, it's a flame that moves forward, which is really, really nice. And, hats off to you, Sandra, really hats off to you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much. That was a beautiful visualization there, the burning flame.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I see it. I can see it, a lot. When you see people, you see their aura, and sometimes you see the light. No, this is a burning flame, and it's not a rampant fire, but it is a flame. And hats off to you, because it takes a lot of desire to do that, and intention and energy to do that. And that means you've done a lot of work on yourself. Good for you.
Bravissima.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for
you
mirroring
stay
that back to
well,
me.
and I will get in touch with you for other things in the future. And thanks. I don't know what else to say. Thank you. Bye bye,
Thank you,
Sandra.
Claudia. Bye-bye.
It was
Thank
such a
you.
pleasure. It really was a pleasure to hear your story and the delicacy and I'm so happy that you were able to share that with us, because it really drives home a lot of ideas that then come forward, what you have been
Yeah.
doing recently.
Yeah. And I really love the questions that you asked too. And I love the style of, conversation where, you might have a thought that comes up out of nowhere. And I would think that the people who are listening are probably thinking the same thing. So it's great to be able to
Good.
reflect on some questions that I haven't been asked before too.
Good.
So
Good. So
you
we'll
for that.
talk again. We'll talk again.
Yeah.
Thank you
Thank you
again
so
for coming.
much.
Yeah, Sandra, I just you blocked out for a moment. I was saying I was so happy to have you as my guest, and I do hope one day you will come back to the show. And I know you're very busy, but thanks once again for being here. And it was a breath of fresh air. That's all I wanted to say.
Oh, thank you so much, Claudia. I really appreciate you having me. And I'm never too busy to slow down and
All
have
right.
these types of conversations.
Okay,
So
ladies and gentlemen, you heard her. It's written in stone now. Thanks again. You have yourself a good day. Bye-bye, Sandra.
Thank you.